And welcome, Hoosier fans, to this week's edition of Assembly Call Radio, where each week we discuss the most important IU basketball stories from the past 7 days. This is our 103rd edition of Assembly Call Radio, and it is our 452nd edition overall of the Assembly Call, recorded on the evening of Thursday, December 6th, 2018, and it is dedicated to Stu Schweisberger, IU class of 1953, a lifelong IU fan who passed away recently, but who left us feeling optimistic that Archie Miller is the right man for the IU job. Rest in peace, Stu. And let's begin this edition of the Assembly Call how we begin every edition of the Assembly Call, and that is with our Hoosier Proud banner moment.
And Indiana is the national champion.
When it comes down, Indiana will be champion.
Smart takes the shot.
The Hoosiers have won the national championship.
This week's banner moment occurred at the 8:42 mark of the first half of Indiana's victory over Penn State, when Lamar Stevens made a jumper for the Nittany Lions, drawing Penn State to within one at 13-12. And what was notable about this basket was that it was Penn State's first field goal since a three-pointer at the 16-14 mark had extended the Lions' early lead to 9-0. In other words, after falling into a big early hole, Indiana held Penn State without a field goal for 7 minutes and 32 seconds, and in the meantime, turned the early deficit into a 13-10 lead. And sure, the 2 threes by Devonte Green were huge, and Romeo had started to get himself going by that point, but what turned the tide in this game was not Indiana's offense, but its defense. Past Indiana teams would have had to shoot their way back into the game and essentially be at the mercy of whether shots were falling or not. But this Indiana team, despite all of its flaws and imperfections, now knows that it can lean on a defense that has become one of the nation's most consistent and reliable in only Archie Miller's second season. On Tuesday night, Indiana's defense gave its offense the time and space it needed to grind its way back into a tough road game. And once the Hoosiers snatched control of the game away from Penn State, they didn't give it back. Yes, the offense needs to improve and find more rhythm, but remember that we are no longer a program that is rudderless when the offense sputters. Tuesday night was further proof of that, and the result was an important road win and a 2-0 start in the Big Ten. Okay, now let me introduce my esteemed co-host for this week's show. To my left, he is the Jason Garrett of Girls Youth Sports Coaching in Cincinnati. He's the president emeritus of the Robert Johnson Fan Club, and he is one of the world's most respected veteran bracketologists.
Look up Bracket Matrix. You'll see Andy has been on the top of the list of the veterans.
He is Andy Bottoms. Andy, what is your Bottoms line from the last week in IU basketball?
No, Jason Garrett. That's offensive.
He's hot, man. He's on fire right now.
How dare you, Eagles fan? I should just be quiet, not even say anything. No, I mean, so, like you said, 2-0 start to the Big Ten. We talked last week about how important this 4-game stretch was, and, halfway through it at this point, and IU's 2-0. So you certainly can't do any better than that. The wins were, ugly and beautiful kind of at the same time, trying to, find different ways to win in the midst of, Juwan Morgan being injured, coming back to win one of them. Kind of holding on for dear life at the end of the Penn State game. But the reality is, they're one of, I think, only 5 teams that are 2-0 in the Big Ten at this point after these first couple games. And they, the chance to go 4-0 in this key stretch that we've talked about so much heading into it is still alive. So those things are all positive. And I think it all, in a lot of ways, circles back to the defense, the things that you said. I know you guys talked about this on Podcast on the Brink, but Alex had some really impressive stats about how IU had done defensively on a per possession basis, limiting everybody but Duke to under 1 point per possession, and so many opponents being the lowest or second lowest output that they've had over the course of the season. So I think you're at least, as you start to look at what this team's identity might be, that's finding and defining what this team does well and what they hang their hat on has been a pretty big challenge over the last handful of years, it feels like. And so the defense certainly is shaping up to be this team's calling card, and hopefully the offense comes along as guys continue to get healthy and the rotation works itself out. But a positive start to the Big Ten season, albeit in a couple of nail biters. But I think if we've learned anything from these first couple rounds of Big Ten games, it's that there are going to be very few, if any, games that are not going to be nail biters at this point.
And to my right, he is a columnist for The Big Lead and a co-host for The Hangover. And in case you're new to the show, here is the single most important thing that you need to know about him. He loves cereal.
Regular Cheerios. Honey Nut Cheerios. As a kid, I love Frosted Flakes. Frosted Mini Wheats are always good. I enjoy a good Rice Krispies.
He is Ryan Phillips. Ryan, what is your rant this week?
Well, of course, it's going to be about the cereal aisle at the grocery store. No, I think that a lot of people were negative about the win over Penn State, and I watched it back, and I get there are some negatives there. The last 5 minutes, the offense did not look good. They didn't come out great in the first 5, but there was a solid 30 minutes there where IU was running circles around Penn State for the most part, and I think that people need to understand that this is a very young team playing its first Big Ten road game. It's not always going to be pretty, and it's not always going to look like amazing, blowout victory that we can all just feel great about everything. That's not the way this works. That's not the way college basketball works. I mean, there are very few. I mean, look, Gonzaga, who's the number 1 team in the country and has played as well as anybody this year, barely won at home last night and had to get a last-second shot from Rui Hachimura to do it. That's college basketball right now. There's a lot of parity, and there's a lot of parity within the Big Ten, and these teams are a lot closer than I think that everybody believes they are and thought they would be at the beginning of the season. We've seen that throughout the first couple games of the Big Ten. It's also, we're playing Big Ten games in the first week of December. These teams are still trying to figure out their identities, still trying to mesh with each other, and Indiana on its own is behind the 8 ball there because of the injuries they've had. I mean, McRoberts was starting to be at the beginning of the year. Devonte Green looked like he was going to be the starting point guard. Those guys were out, and they're not playing starters minutes right now. That's just a symptom of what's been going on with the team injury wise. Eventually, I think that they will sort of gel and settle in. And that's sort of what what December is supposed to be for. And now with the new Big Ten schedule, you don't really get a chance to do that. So we're going to see them play on Saturday into Louisville, then have then have Butler, and then have a couple games that they hopefully can get more in the flow of things before we open up Big Ten season. But this schedule is rough, and we knew it was going to be rough early. And quite frankly, to be 7-2 right now, I don't care how you do it. To be 7-2 right now is a positive, especially considering one of those losses at Arkansas. They kind of got screwed on a late call, and they could have a road win at Arkansas. So this team could very easily be 8-1 with that, and the loss to Duke's the only real bad one there. So I think they haven't played up to their potential yet, but it's December. They're not supposed to be playing up to their potential yet.
All right, here's what we're going to talk about this week. We'll do a quick Big Ten reset. Then we're going to talk about Clifton Moore. He's been a hot topic of conversation since the Penn State game. Did his 7 minutes versus Penn State make it clear that he deserves more time moving forward? We'll dive into that. And then as we always do, we will answer your questions. All of that coming this week on Assembly Call Radio. But first, let's talk real quick about mattresses.
I just want to go lay in bed.
Because the presenting sponsor of Assembly Call Radio, Comfort Option, is literally all about mattresses. Comfort Option is based in Indianapolis, run by IU grads and fans, and they have over 65 years of experience in crafting top-quality mattresses. And if you live in or around Indianapolis or Bloomington, you can take advantage of their revolutionary mattress store-to-your-door service. Comfort Option will literally bring the mattress store to your home and custom design a mattress for you right there on the spot based on your preferences. You just have to schedule the appointment.
On a Saturday?
Yes, you can even schedule on a Saturday. And if you live outside Indy or Bloomington, you can go to comfortoption.com and order their highly reviewed Alpha mattress, which they produce in-house and ship directly to you anywhere in the U.S. So basically, you save a bunch of money by cutting out the middleman.
I mean, those guys do suck, quite frankly.
They do. That's why you want to cut them out. And here's something really cool. Comfort Option is giving us 4 of their awesome season tickets to the upcoming Pacers-Hornets game on Sunday, January 20th to use for a contest. So if you want to see Victor and Cody play, all you have to do is order a mattress from Comfort Option between now and Friday, December 14th, and use the promo code ASSEMBLY when you check out, either online if you're ordering the Alpha or in person with the rep who brings the mattress store to your door. Not only will you get $50 off your purchase, but you'll be entered into the drawing for the tickets. On December 15th, we'll pick 2 winners, each of whom will get 2 tickets, and then we'll send them to you immediately so you can use them as Christmas presents if you want to. Pretty cool, right?
My life has totally changed.
So again, go to comfortoption.com, order your Alpha mattress, or schedule your in-home mattress store service, and then use the promo code ASSEMBLY to get $50 off your purchase and be entered into the drawing for the Pacers-Hornets tickets.
Thank you.
Okay, let's do, before we start talking Clifton Moore, let's do a quick Big Ten reset here, Andy, because, as you said, there's, Indiana's one of, 5 teams that are 2-0, and I found that interesting when I looked at this, that, after this first set of games, kind of the clear delineation that we thought, might happen with the first 4 or 5 teams. It's kind of happened. You got Indiana, Michigan State, Ohio State, Wisconsin, Michigan, all at 2-0. Then Purdue, Nebraska, Minnesota, Maryland, all right behind them at 1-1. So what as you kind of look at these first 2 games, what did we learn about the conference from, other than, as you said, every game seems like it's going to come down to the wire this year?
Yeah, I mean, that really was as big a takeaway for me as anything. As invincible as Michigan had looked at times, and it was kind of the same way. IU, squeaking out a win over Northwestern. I think similar to what Ryan said about the Penn State game, people weren't really happy about it, and there were reasons not to be. But they gave Michigan all they could handle on I guess whatever. I think it was after the IU game. Maybe it was Tuesday night. So there are no nights off. Even Iowa, that's 0-2, had played really well up to that point. They had a really tough schedule with, playing Wisconsin at their place and then going to Michigan State, and kind of ran into a buzzsaw there. Minnesota's been up and down. I thought they, really came back and played well on an emotional night for them against Nebraska in a game that it seemed like Nebraska had started to take control of and really came back. So, I think that's really the biggest thing, and it reinforces a lot of what we've talked about just in terms of, quality wins. You referenced the Ken Pom Tier A games that'll be there in the Big Ten. I think that, virtually every game is going to be close, but, all those give you a chance for quality wins, whether those be at home or on the road. Rutgers and Illinois seem to be, kind of far and away the lowest at this point. But I mean, the Pomeroy projections have, I think, between 8-12 and 12-8, looks like probably about 9 teams, I want to say, at this point.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't reflect the Maryland and Purdue games, but I think being a team, as I talked about in the Open, that really is playing well defensively will serve you well. Hopefully that continues to travel as things get better offensively, and I think feels like over the course of time you've seen that teams that are really solid on that end of the floor are able to sustain the ups and downs and the challenging games that are sure to come over the course of things. But yeah, it's kind of funny. I mean, those 5 teams that are 2-0, maybe Nebraska is the team that's looked the best outside of that isn't 2-0. But in a lot of ways, the Michigan State, Wisconsin for sure have kind of felt like the 3 teams that have actually played the best. So that bears itself out in the standings so far.
It's just interesting how the schedule kind of fell out, that those teams that we thought would kind of be toward the top, none of them played each other. So, they all kind of had that chance to go 2-0. Ryan, any thoughts on?
We didn't really get to answer any serious questions yet, but I think that's actually good for the league because, these early conference games, I don't like them. I don't think any of us like them, and don't like how the conference season is now starting in early December. And you don't want some of your best games to happen when teams are still trying to figure it out. I want to see the top teams play each other when they're in the middle of their season. They're warmed up. They're on campus with all their students, and it's a crazy atmosphere. And it just doesn't feel like that's where we're at right now. So I'm kind of glad that none of the big teams have faced each other yet. I want to really see these teams play each other when they're ready to play each other.
Yep. All right. Any final thoughts on the Big Ten, Andy, before we move on?
I mean, from a bracketology perspective, it certainly looks like they're shaping up to potentially have as many teams in the tournament as anybody.
Maybe double what they had last year.
Yeah, probably at least. Just because they've fared so well in non-conference play in general, there's a handful of teams that still have maybe one big game left, so a chance to even improve upon that a little bit more. You got Michigan State goes to Florida, who hasn't looked particularly good. Wisconsin goes to Marquette. IU, Louisville. You got the Crossroads, so Purdue playing Notre Dame. They haven't been great. Iowa's playing Iowa State as we record this, and I think Nebraska's got Creighton over the weekend too. So you've got for as well as the league has played, I think they've got even additional opportunities to really separate themselves. And when you think about how the team played or how the conference fared last year, is a pretty huge difference.
Yep. All righty, coming up here on the Assembly Call, let's talk about Clifton Moore, who made a few big plays to help IU's cause against Penn State. Should he become a regular part of the rotation, get more minutes? We're going to discuss that next. Stick with us here on the Assembly Call. All right, 15:03 Welcome to everybody watching live. Good to see you all here. Andy, do you have that one option checked where it's
unchecked?
Changing your audio?
The automatic one. Yeah. I don't know. Does that do anything if I
don't know. Maybe point the mic towards your face a little. I mean, I'm kind of there right now, Andy.
I mean, I could not be closer to it right now.
Well, but it's like this though, and you're talking to the side.
You do know he didn't actually say that right now, did you?
I do know, but he was probably thinking it, and he probably would have said it. Had
Absolutely
you
was thinking it. Absolutely. I may have to hop off, or not like hop off, but I may have to do a post in the middle of this segment, so I'll let you know in the chat. Because something just happened in the football game. Somebody else may grab it, but I'm just letting you know. I'll let you know.
Like a streaker on the field, or
no? Derrick Henry just ran over the entire Jaguars defense for a 99-yard touchdown, and I'm surprised he survived.
Oh wow,
he's so heavy.
Okay, so real quick thought here before we get into this, because I know I got a lot of mess. Oh,
is it Ryan? Is this as you look?
That
at
sounds
this,
better.
Is this better positioning?
Yes, much better.
All right. Well, I also changed like 3 audio settings, so now we don't know what actually made the difference. But here we are.
Okay, huh?
That's exciting.
Okay. So just a quick note, because I got several comments from people about the chat after the IU Penn State game and even the Northwestern game, just about things kind of starting to turn a little bit more negative that we're used to. We kind of anticipated this, as the show grows, as more people start showing up, it's probably going to be a little bit more representative of the fan base as a whole. And we've always been kind of insulated from that. And I think that's part of why, when people have shown up here and come to the chat mob and come to the stuff that we've done, I think they've appreciated the kind of conversation we have, because I think for the most part, it's analytical, but it's respectful. It can be critical, but it's supportive, critical of plays, not people. So, we've got a few moderators, and if you're interested in being a YouTube moderator, let me know, because, people who have been around, who we trust, we want to give you that ability, because, the chat is, as much, if not more, yours than it is ours. And so, we eventually we'll have to try and figure out, like, we don't want to censor people too much, but we also don't want to let it become a cesspool of negativity that annoys people and gets in the way of having good conversation. So, we've had some emails, have emailed with Kent and with Brian and with some other people about, maybe some things that we can do. But the best way that we'll do that is by leading by example, and by making sure that when people come to the chat, it's a real outlier when you come in and are just negative for no reason or attacking somebody. And there's absolutely nothing wrong to me with shaming somebody if they come in and that's the kind of, tone that they're going to take, because that's just not what we do here.
Or if they're being super negative, just ignore them.
Yeah, ignore them.
What they want, because the people who come in to troll, the whole thing they want is a reaction. So
and there are some people, like I know some of the people that maybe for the Penn State game, there are people who I think come in and they have some points and they want to be active and they could be valued members of the community, but I think we just need to show them, that there's a certain way that we talk around here. Like there's a certain level of support that has to kind of underwrite everything that we're talking about and everything that we do. So I just want you to know that I'm aware of that. People have made me aware of that. We certainly want to do everything that we can to keep the chat what makes it a place that people love to go. But also just know that it's hard for us to keep track of it during the actual show. So, we're going to need your help doing that, both by example and by stepping up and saying something. And if someone says something that's out of line, let's absolutely not hesitate to let them know about it.
And don't start a fight, but just kind of be like, hey, that's not how we talk around here.
Exactly.
Because if you fight with people, then you're part of the problem and you're creating part of the problem. I think it's okay to point it out and be like, hey, that's not the way things run around here. And you'll get accused of just not paying attention. Like, oh, you're not looking at the game and you're not paying attention to bad things. And you're just like, want to be rosy and all that stuff. And you know what? That's kind of why we watch basketball, is to have fun, not to be miserable. So,
yep.
It's not life or death. And some people come in every time anything goes wrong whatsoever, and they're just like, oh, this team's not even going to make the postseason. This team's going to go below 500 and all this stuff. And it's just like, first of all, it's unrealistic and it's stupid. That's no different than it's somebody coming in saying, oh, this team's going to go undefeated and win everything. But the difference with somebody saying they're going to go undefeated, win everything, at least it's an optimistic, positive thing, and it isn't oppressive. But when somebody's being super hyper negative like that, it's no fun for anybody. And I don't know. You can point out flaws, you can point out faults, but I don't want to either see people talking, taking personal shots at players and things like that. That to me, that's completely out of bounds. You can say, hey, I didn't think a guy gave great effort tonight. I didn't think he hustled. I didn't think he did this. I didn't think he did that. But when you start calling guys lazy, I mean, these guys are, I'm sorry, but they're scholarship athletes. None of them
They're not
are
lazy.
Like
They're
none
not
of them
lazy.
are lazy. So yeah, I just, let's keep personal attacks against anybody and the players completely off this board. And I think that I speak for the other two when I say, if you start personally attacking people, you're gone. I don't want anything to do with you. And I don't,
He ought to be fired.
we love having as many viewers as possible. We love having as many people in the chat talking. But if you start personally attacking people, I don't want you to be watching our show. That's just me.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Archie.
Okay. So let's talk Clifton Moore. What do you say?
Okay. And I'll let you know if I have to jump off.
Okay.
It'll be like for 3 minutes, but
Okay. Sweet. Okay, let's hop in and do this. Andy, did you want to say anything about that?
No, I think you guys covered it well. I told you guys before, just the Twitter account, some of the people, it's just like every comment is negative about certain guys. It's just kind of gets old.
It's exhausting.
It was not running the Twitter account was not an enjoyable experience for me.
Yeah. Hey, we got a for once I agree with Ryan in the chat. So there we go.
Hey,
for once, wow.
And by the way, you can be negative about us. Personal attacks on
care.
us. Totally fine.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
hey, you speak for yourself.
Say whatever you want about me.
We're semi-professionals. You can rip on us, okay?
Yeah.
we can
say
take
whatever
that.
you want about me.
Brian's being stupid again.
The worst thing you could possibly say about me, somebody has topped it long ago. So don't worry.
Okay, here we go. Here we go. Welcome back to the Assembly Call. You can find all of our content at our website, assemblycall.com. And if you ever want to participate in our unedited live broadcasts,
chat mobbers,
or watch those replays, then check out our YouTube channel. You will be privy to all of the between segment banner that might not make it into the radio show or the podcast edit, like when Ryan starts referring to himself in the third person in the midst of one of his self-aggrandizing lies.
Ryan is the cover boy for Art of Manliness.
Join us live at youtube.com/assemblycall. I am Jerod Morris. I'm here with Andy Bottoms and Ryan Phillips. So, guys, I wasn't on the Penn State postgame show. You both did a great job with it, as I knew that you would, as you always do when I'm not there. And so I didn't get a chance to watch the game live, but certainly caught up on it, have watched it since and kind of dug into it. And, it was interesting not watching the game, but kind of seeing the reaction and seeing what people said about Clifton Moore, and the kind of spark that he gave for the 7 minutes he was in there in the first half. And so I was really excited to watch it and see how he played, because obviously we've been curious to see what he would do with more time. And it's been a big narrative since that game. People really impressed, talking about maybe it's time now to give him some more time. Will he start playing more? Should he get Justin Smith's minutes? Until Justin's ready to go. Why hasn't he been playing more this season? We must have gotten like 10 or 11 questions about that before this show, and that's kind of a composite question that pulls them all together. So I want to break this down. And just to remind people of the overview, when Clifton came in, it was at the 6:40 mark in the first half. Indiana was down 19-18. He played the rest of the first half. Juwan had a couple of fouls. Deron had a couple of fouls. I think Justin may have too. And Indiana went on a 16-11 run. They led 34-30 at the half. And Clifton made some really good plays. Like I think, one takeaway is that he made some good plays that showed that in a pinch, he can contribute and do some things, right? He ran the floor and had that great tip-in on Romeo's missed three. He hustled his way into a steal, even though, the opportunity was created because he was originally out of position trying to help on the perimeter, but he did recover, hustle his way to a steal. Had a great block shot when he came over, helping from the weak side. Altered another shot by Josh Reeves. And he, really hustled after that Al Durham free throw and tipped it off the Penn State player, which gave Indiana that possession back. So he did some positive things, but I went back and I watched every single possession focusing just on him. And, I'll get into the specifics here in a minute, but I think what it showed me was things that he still needs to work on, and probably the reasons, Ryan, why Archie hasn't quite been ready to trust him and play him. And the main things are just being consistently out of position defensively, and not being aware, like when he got the back screen of Mike Watkins gets the easy dunk. He messed up a couple of ball screen coverages, and so that was an issue. And more actually important than that, and I didn't expect this, was offensively. Indiana scored okay while he was out there, but it's because Romeo hit a lot of high difficulty shots. And part of the reason he had to take a lot of those step back jumpers is he couldn't get into the lane because Clifton was kind of anchored to the block, and it hurt Indiana's spacing. And so to me, again, I think Clifton showed some really good things that showed that he can make a few plays when you need to put him in there in the pinch. But looking at it a lot more closely, some of the subtleties, to me, I'm not ready to say now that he's ready to start getting a lot more minutes, and I think it makes a little bit more sense maybe why Archie has been loath to put him out there, just because of some of those things that are not yet at the trustworthy stage in a Big Ten game.
I'll say this. I think that the only way Clifton's going to get better is to see the floor. I mean, some guys just don't improve only from practicing. And so getting those 7 minutes, I'd really like to see him continue to get minutes, but not 20 minutes a game. I'd like to see him get some minutes to contribute. Look, his size you can't teach, and he's a really big guy who, quite frankly, IU doesn't really have that straight up length in a guy who is as physically gifted as he is. I mean, let's face it, Evan Fitzner's tall, but he's not strong, and he isn't really a threat defensively. Moore did not play very well defensively, but I think that you can build on that and build on the athleticism and the size that he possesses. Offensively, going forward, as I said in the Penn State game, I thought when he was moving forward, he looked good. And I thought that, he's not going to be in the right position every single time. It's the first time on the floor really in a Big Ten game where they're counting on him. And I think that, quite frankly, his performance was to be expected. I thought there were some positives, and there's stuff to build on there. Of course, he's not perfect. He's essentially a freshman because he barely played last year, and he needs to get time to get better. But I was encouraged by the fact that Archie threw him out there. And because it seems like we've seen just Jake Forrester more than Clifton, and to see Clifton go out there and actually not look, he didn't look completely out of place. He made some bad reads.
I mean,
like
on some of them he did.
I disagree with you. I'm not saying he looked great.
There was one play he literally went and double teamed Al Durham's man on the perimeter when there was there were some where he did look out of place. Now, not everything, and he recovered some.
He didn't stand out as that guy does not belong on the floor. What I agree that he made some bad reads and made some bad decisions. Okay, but I don't think it was get him out of the game.
No, it was better than last year when at times last year he did look like kind of a fish out of water.
Yes.
And he didn't quite look like that, but still.
There were bad moments. I agree. And look, I'm sure the adrenaline was going nuts. He's playing in his home state. They said on the broadcast he had a lot of family and friends there and all that stuff. He needs to settle in, and there's a couple games going up where hopefully he can get some minutes and maybe settle in a little, especially with the struggles of Justin Smith. Now, look, Justin Smith played well defensively, and I know the offense is awful right now, but he played well defensively and grabbed rebounds. But if Justin Smith is really, really, really struggling, maybe you do put in another guy. If there's nothing it can hurt from having Clifton Moore play a little bit in some of the games coming up, particularly if a guy like Deron Davis's recovery is as slow as it has been and he can't play as much and he's fouling guys and, you're having issues. You need to be able to have that go-to from somebody off the bench. And I would like to see him get some more minutes and see if there is something there. If there isn't, there isn't. But, we don't know yet because we've only got 7 minutes.
All right, Andy wants us both to shut up so he can come in and say the thing that people will actually respect and listen to.
I don't know. I'll do my best. I think there were enough. The biggest thing that he brought to me was energy, and at a time when
he did bring energy,
it was kind of a slog in that part of the game. I did think he brought energy and made hustle plays. In some cases, as you said, the result of kind of needing to hustle for a reason other than, hustling by itself. But I mean, you talked about how important that basket was at the end of the first half that Finney made. That doesn't happen if he doesn't really go after that free throw. So I think when you look at it that way, and so you try to figure out like, what's, is there another guy from IU that you can think of that could, kind of give that? I think a little bit that's what Freddie McSwain like kind of started out as a year ago. Now, certainly they're not the same athletically. They're, different basketball backgrounds, all those kinds of things. But the one thing that McSwain brought, like before he really carved out an even bigger role for himself last year, was he was going to go out, he was going to play really hard and kind of figure things out. And there were times with him that he wasn't probably in the greatest position. But they worked with him to a point where by the end of the season, he was playing somewhat out of necessity, big minutes, but was kind of getting the most out of what he had. So I guess I would say I saw enough from Clifton to say I'd like to see more. But I don't think it's a switch that you flip and say all of a sudden he's getting a ton of minutes, which I think is, a conclusion that some people have jumped to. But it's enough to say that it's intriguing what he might be able to do if given extra time. And, as Ryan said, I think it's one of those cases where it's like, how would they have had any idea of what to expect from him in that scenario based on when he had seen action in other games? And I think he looked like a guy who had played very few meaningful minutes over the course of his college career. And it's really just becomes a matter of how quickly he can kind of figure things out, particularly on the defensive end. But if there's things that you want to nitpick with him, it's certainly on the defensive end. And it's easy to draw the conclusion that would say, if he doesn't have things figured out on that end, he isn't necessarily a guy that's going to play. And on a team that isn't playing a ton of different big guys and doesn't want to seem to play too many, traditional bigs at the same time, you can also kind of see why he is where he is in the pecking order of that type of player when you've got, Jerod Davis and Evan Fitzner.
Well, let's remember too that he was a guy who people talked about as being almost like a really big stretch four coming out of high school. So I don't think he is a traditional big man. Maybe that's what they're trying to make him into, but the talent is certainly there. There's no question about that. It's about developing it, and it's about finding a role for him in this offense that maybe doesn't exist right now as kind of a stretch four, but we're seeing Fitzner out on the perimeter more. And, things like that we didn't see from big guys last year. So maybe there is kind of a role for him developing, but again, he's got to develop. He's got to do his part of the job and develop and become, more knowledgeable on offense and better, more focused on defense.
It's interesting, because we did hear about, his ability to face the basket. And that's why I'm kind of surprised seeing that when he's in there, he kind of anchors himself to the block posting up. And, none of the guys are dribbling into position to try and get him a look down low. And so I think part of the issue is, you could alleviate some of those problems by maybe putting him in a different role offensively. And you saw it during the final few minutes of the first half. They pulled him away from the block and had him set a lot of ball screens so that now he's away from the basket. It opened up. That's what he did on the play Rob Finney had. So the lane is open.
Pick and pop would be the role I would pick.
Yeah. Now right now, his defender doesn't respect him enough that if he's popping or rolling, they're not even paying attention to him. So Watkins was just dropping back. If he starts to show some more, they will. But that would be one adjustment that I would make, because it really clogged up the offense. And when they pulled him away from the basket, then it gave some more freedom for Rob to get in there and some of those other guys. So that would be one thing that I would do. And defensively, he's probably going to keep struggling in ball screens. You're just going to have to be ready to help. But he does have some awareness to come over and help and get block shots and alter shots. And we saw him do that 3 or 4 times. So he can at least help to make up for some of his defensive shortcomings by just being a rim protector. And sometimes you just need a guy down there who can do that and alter a shot, when you get beat. So, Andy, sorry, what were you going to say?
No, I was going to say a little something similar to what you did. I felt like they did put him in some of those ball screens, but just didn't really seem to be like in sync with where he was when the dribbler was trying to come toward him. And I think part of that is just familiarity. Yeah. Like he didn't look, for all that, being, down on the block, he also didn't necessarily look comfortable out on the court either, even when he had the ball a couple times, and I felt like he was just looking to get rid of it. But I think so much of that is just a guy who hasn't played in minutes that mattered as much as anything. And I do think, some of the rim protection and things like that were good. The play that he got, the Watkins lob, it's like you don't really need to be out that far on Watkins in the first place. And I thought, the inside the hall, like film study this week was all about him. And it kind of does a good job of highlighting some of the positives and negatives that he had and that we've talked about. And And like I said, it was enough to be intrigued to see more. And maybe you start to be able to form a little more well-rounded opinion if he's able to find himself in similar situations going forward. Good vibes around Clifton Moore.
I have this drop here labeled "Good Vibes, Clifton Moore," and I wasn't sure what it was.
So of course,
I'm
you
glad
put it on the air.
Absolutely.
Well, it's one of Andy's drops, so it's probably not going to be controversial. If I don't know something you said, then I'm a little more worried about it. So see, Ryan, that wasn't so bad, was it? I think that was I think we were pretty fair in that conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you could watch that game and be like, Clifton Moore should never leave the bench. I think that you look at it as, okay, there were some positives, there were some negatives. He's got to improve. No one's saying he's a finished product. But people, I love IU fans want to have the shiny new toy. And so they're kind of like, well, what about him playing 20 minutes a game? It's like, what? Like, no, nowhere near that. But I get it. You recruited these guys. You followed their recruitment. They were, you got really excited about them. And then they come and they don't play for a while. That's kind of the nature of college basketball, unless you're a 5-star, is they're going to kind of slowly bring you along. And he's a guy that had a lot of developing to do and still does.
All right, so coming up here, we continue our conversation kind of in this vein and talk about playing time, because if Clifton's going to play more, where do those minutes come from? Should Archie stick with guys like Justin and Devonte while they figure things out? We'll talk about that next here on the Assembly Call. Stick with us. All right, so that was 14-19.
Well, at least we're missing the worst Thursday night football game of the year.
Is it that bad?
6-6 Titans versus the 4-8 Jaguars, and it's 13-2 with 14 seconds before halftime.
Sounds awesome.
Mm-hmm. Thursday night football is always awesome, Jerod.
I'm so glad that we scheduled these for Thursday night.
You mean when I'm working?
Okay, so we'll hit this. I guess, okay, so here's what I want to hit this segment is, this idea of, okay, a guy like him needs more playing time, or like, let's get Jake more playing time, get these guys ready, which is easy to say when you're playing like sub 300 teams, but how do you try and work them in now when every minute is so tight, especially in Big Ten play? Do you still try and give them minutes to figure things out, or do they need to have it figured out before you put them in there? And then with guys like Devonte and Justin that have a track record of success, but clearly are inconsistent, but you need them to play better, how much patience do you have with them? Kind of that push and pull, which, there's no right answer to it, but it's so easy to just say like, well, let's just, get Justin out of there, get Devonte out of there, let's get these other guys in. It's like, well, we need these guys. It's easy to say, but when you're the coach, you need these guys to stick with you. You can't just,
abandon
sit
them
them on
at the drop of a hat.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, we'll hit that.
Okay.
All right. Here we go. Okay. Welcome back to the Assembly Call. I am Jerod Morris here with Andy Bottoms and Ryan Phillips. Remember that if you are a serious IU Hoops fan, you need to be subscribed to our free IU basketball email newsletter, especially now that the season has started and we are sending our in-depth post-game analysis emails the morning after every game.
There's a high-level operation going on out there.
And joining is easy. Just text IU to 66866 or go to assemblycall.com. That's IU to 66866 or go to assemblycall.com.
Make no excuses.
Can we get some basketball, please?
All right, let's get back to talking some basketball, guys. So we just, talked about Clifton Moore and some of what we saw in the Penn State game. And I've seen a lot of people, talking about he needs more minutes. And why aren't we getting, Jake Forrester out there? And Damezi was playing earlier in the season. Why isn't he playing now? And people also contrasting that with the struggles of Justin Smith and Devonte Green. And not necessarily saying that, you should put Jake Forrester in for Justin Smith, but I'm seeing a lot of, bench these guys, sit these guys down. And so I guess what I want to kind of explore a little bit, and Andy, I'll start with you, is, you take a guy like Clifton or a guy like Damezi or Jake, who clearly are inexperienced, need to work through some things. especially now that you're into, Big Ten play has started. You've got, you only have a couple games left against, kind of sub 300 opponents. Every game kind of matters now, and every minute matters. Where do you draw the line between these guys need some time? Let's maybe get them out there and work on some things, and we got to win this game right now, because it's and there obviously is no perfect answer to that. But how do you kind of look at that from Archie's perspective?
I think he's in a situation at this point where, and I'd say this is about any coach, but you saw progress last year. Now you want to see additional progress and you want to see wins. I mean, ultimately his responsibility is to win basketball games. And yeah, there's a lot of other things along with that in terms of, work in the classroom and developing and shepherding the program. But the reality is he's getting paid predominantly to win basketball games. And so he has to play the guys who he thinks give him the best chance to do that in that given game. And so you saw early in the season, Damezi played partly out of necessity because you had all the injuries that were there, and Clifton and Jake did not because, as best we could tell, and our answer, pretty much throughout was he doesn't think based on what he's seen in practice, they're able to help this team win games. And so, a little bit like what the situation that presented itself for Clifton, that was really born more out of foul trouble potentially than really trying to say, hey, I'm going to give him minutes. And so he did that. And again, I think in doing so, earned some potential for other time. But to me, it's trying to figure out over the course of this season, what's going to win you games. I think if you, in an ideal situation, have a good enough relationship with the players who aren't playing, that there's clear communication as to, hey, this is what you need to do to get on the floor. If you're not doing that, here's kind of where you stand. I mean, that's no different than their or an office job of providing feedback and letting people know, here's where you stand, here's why, here's what you need to do to get better. And if they're doing those things, you see some change. And if they're not, you won't. So I think that the communication component of that becomes as important as everything. And he talked about that a lot coming into the year. The guys are going to need to sacrifice things and figure that out. So, to me, I think his responsibility is to win and not necessarily try to get things prepared for on down the line, too much this season, as opposed to trying to, in the moment, figure out what gives them the best chance, given the matchups, given the situation, given everything else.
Ryan, what do you think?
It's tough once the season starts to really once we get to this point of the season, I would say, and especially once the conference season starts. But guess what? Injuries happen, guys get in foul trouble. There's gonna be chances for guys to get on the floor. It's about carving out the time on the floor in practice and making sure they're doing all the right things and putting in the right effort to earn that playing time. And if guys aren't getting in to games and there's an obvious need for a guy like that on the floor, it tells you something. And I'm not saying that applies necessarily to Clifton Moore or Jake Forrester or Damezi or whatever, but if there's a clear necessity for a player at those positions and they're not getting on the floor, it tells you the coaches don't think they're ready.
Like what was it, the UC Davis game where we finished the game with just 5 guys and he was not going to sub anybody else in? I
mean, let's face it, the coaches want to win as much as anybody else. They'll put in anybody they think will help them win. And so they clearly in that game thought that the 5 they were going with were a better option than using the bench. And we can sit here and analyze it as much as we want, but the coaches know the team better than we do. And they know what's going on in practice, and they know they know these kids' personalities. They know everything. And so it's really, they're the ones to make that decision. And if they're making certain decisions, there's almost certainly a reason why.
The coaches know the team better than the fans.
You know what? Some fans don't believe that. So
hard to believe.
Always got to repeat it.
We are breaking some news here.
I mean, in all honesty, though, go back to last season. I think you saw that. Again, I'm going to throw out McSwain again. Here's a guy who Archie comes in first year in the program. Freddie McSwain is a senior. There's really getting him to play and building him up the way that they did paid no dividends really for Archie for the future of his coaching tenure, but they played him and expanded his role and did that because it gave them the best chance to win. McRoberts, Same thing, not a scholarship guy. You could have done a whole bunch of things to say, hey, I need to give these guys time to keep these guys happy, to do whatever. He played him because he thought he gave him the best chance to win. And with last year's team, that was true. It's been hard to kind of figure out what exactly his role looks like this year because he's been injured so much and still kind of working his way back. But in general, I mean, I don't think you have to look back very far with Archie that, he's going to play the guys regardless of what the kind of future payoff of it really is, in year 2, 3, whatever.
Yeah. You're not tanking for draft
games.
picks, like there's no point to losing. So, intentionally or anything. So yeah, he's going to put the best guys out.
You're listening to the Assembly Call. I'm Jerod Morris here with Ryan Phillips and Andy Bottoms. So let me ask you this, Andy. Take guys like Justin Smith and Devonte Green. Like, these are clear guys who are in the rotation. They're going to be in the rotation. They're very important pieces. This Indiana team isn't competing for a top 4 or 5 spot in the Big Ten without getting positive contributions from them. And they've done some good things. Devonte was huge in the first half against Penn State. And then in the second half, through some just head-slappingly bad turnovers, and we've obviously seen him oscillate between those two poles before. And Justin Smith, has really struggled to find a rhythm offensively. He was better defensively, did a nice job taking on that challenge of guarding Lamar Stevens. But those guys have been so up and down, and so what do you do with them? Because it's really easy to say, just stick them on the bench. And Archie has. I mean, he's pulled both of those guys for mistakes, like right after the mistakes. And, Justin has spent, I think, entire halves on the bench. Was it the Arkansas game? He made the mistake and got blocked by Daniel Gafford. He sat the rest of the game. So, but you also know how important these guys are, so you can't just write them off. And it's like, all right, well, we're just not going to play you anymore. So where do you kind of draw that line, and how much patience do you have with guys like that, knowing that as the season goes along, like, you need them to become their best selves, even if they don't look anything close to that right now?
Yeah, I guess that's why he gets paid a lot more than we do to talk about it. I think you got to figure out what buttons to push and what works for each guy, because I think that's really what becomes challenging. We've speculated on the show about Justin being kind of more, I don't know, cerebral or whatever you want to say, kind of getting in his own head a little bit about some of those kinds of things. I think the unique thing about both those players, I guess there's two things about both those guys. One, you've seen them do it. That they can come up big in big moments. You think back to that Minnesota game last year. Justin Smith plays great, played really well against Ohio State at the end of the season. Devonte, had those couple great games. So that it's there. I think that's the part that becomes harder versus a guy like, Clifton, who you haven't seen in anything resembling a really, tight game scenario. You've seen those guys do it, so that it's in there. You got to figure out how to bring it out, but you're not trying to answer the question of can they do it. The answer to that is yes. It's a matter of how you get them to be able to. And both those guys, the other point that I would make is there really aren't obvious other places to turn for either one of those guys. I think I brought this up about Justin on one of the other games. There's really not, if Jerome Hunter's healthy, maybe, you'd say him. If Race Thompson is healthy, maybe you'd say him, but there's not really another guy like Justin that allows them to do the things that they want to do with him playing the 4. And Devonte kind of the same way. There's not really another point guard on the team necessarily. I think Al can do that in spurts, but I don't know that that's the role he's best suited for, because he's played so well lately in a different role. So I think that becomes hard, is that there's not, you could say I want to take those guys out, but you're not, it's not really a like for like swap when you get into it at that point. And I think that, kind of makes those kinds of decisions that much more difficult given this specific team's roster and component pieces.
Yeah, I think Devonte, you've just got to live with some of the mistakes. That's just who he is, and hopefully he cleans it up as he plays more. Remember, he's still just coming back from injury as well, so maybe it'll be a little better. I was encouraged by the Penn State game until that stretch of 4 minutes where he had 4 turnovers. Now, we've seen that from Devonte before. We'll probably see it again, but the key for him is just cutting those out, so it's not every game that happens, but every other game, and then every third game, and then every fourth game, and just kind of slowly moving that. But I thought that the thing he brings that so few guys on this roster can do is just he can make plays for other people. That assist where he drove into the lane and gave it up to Jawan, that was perfect. That was exactly what you want. You want to be such a threat when you're driving that other people have to react to you. And really, other than Romeo Langford, we don't have a guy that other teams are swarming to when he drives. Devonte Green, I don't know what it is about the way he moves or whatever, but people just, they gravitate towards him defensively, and that leaves other guys open. As long as he's not forcing shots and he's finding the open guys, he can do really well in that role. The key is just to stop turning the ball over. And for Justin, I think A, he's got to cut down on the turnovers, and B, he just has to be simple, or just has to simplify everything offensively. Right now, he's taken a couple jump shots in the last few games, and that's not how he's going to get his offense going. He can make jump shots, but that's not how he's going to get his offense going. He's going to get his offense going in the post, cutting back door, doing things like that. And I think that's just the way he's going to get going. And he's got to focus on that, and then focus on defense and rebounding. If he can do those things, I think we'll start to see him come back.
We've run a couple nice plays with back cuts to get guards some open looks going toward the basket. I'd like to see us do something like that for Justin, maybe early in the Louisville game. Try and get him an oop or something going to the basket to get him going, get the crowd going. It feels like maybe something like that would help him just get going early in a game, to have something positive go offensively. Because, when you have Romeo and you have Juwan, you're not going to run a lot of stuff for Justin. Maybe now you try and do it a little bit just to get him going, a couple times, whatever that is, whatever he's comfortable with. Anything else on that topic?
No, I think there is just, you got to be patient. It's December. I keep reminding people, it's like, I know we're playing consequential games because it's Duke, and then it's, 2 conference games, and then it's Louisville and Butler, but it's still early. And this team is still trying to figure out who it is.
Yeah, and maybe try not to focus so much on the negatives. Like, maybe just try and balance it, and for every time you're going to go on Twitter and just rip a guy for a turnover, maybe mention the big 3-pointer that they made or the nice defensive possession that they had. Try and
Devonte's
be a little...
two threes against Penn State were huge.
Yeah, I mean, both of those guys have made plays. I think the problem with it is the mistake, because they're turning it over, their mistakes are so obvious, so they stand out. But especially with Justin, some of the positive things he's doing are more subtle. It's more on the defensive end, and maybe preventing his man from getting the ball or forcing a tough shot. It doesn't always jump out, so it's a little bit harder to notice. And when you have turnovers, those are easy things to get mad about. But it's just try and have a spirit of support with these guys, especially when we're commenting on them publicly. Okay.
I felt like we had an amazing conversation on all levels.
Thank you for that, Coach. All right, coming up here in our final segment, we're going to answer your questions, including what former IU player is the best player comp for Ryan as a player, and also we'll talk a little bit more about Zach McRoberts' role moving forward and more. That's next. Stick with us. All right, 14 minutes.
Someday we have to do maybe over the holidays, do a Trace Jackson Davis breakdown.
Holy crap, I totally forgot about that for this week.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's fine. There's a lot of other stuff to talk about.
Yeah, it's a little hard during the season, but let's do it during the holidays. Maybe like the Jacksonville postgame show. We'll just do.
No, let's do it on a radio show, I think.
I know. I'm kidding.
Because I want to be specific. But yeah.
I was kidding.
Jacksonville postgame show, Clifton Moore and Damezi Anderson will have gotten a lot of minutes at a blowout, and we can rehash this discussion about good vibes around Clifton Moore.
I actually have a player comp for Trace Jackson Davis.
Boy. Do you now?
Yeah. I hate player comps. I do.
All right. Let's. Oh wait. Okay, Andy, we're at 43-22. So if you want to math us up here.
8:38.
Yep, 8:38. So 8:02. That's it's a decent little segment. So we'll hit that question real quick for you, Ryan, and we'll do that quick. Then let's talk about McRoberts. We already hit Tom's question about why does he give Smith so much playing time? Why not play Anderson or some of the other freshmen until he starts producing more? That's just not realistic.
Oh my goodness, the player comps for me in this. The player comps for me in this chat.
Or is there some coming up in the chat?
I think we'll need you to give a brief description of your game so that we can offer our own opinions on that. So
Jamie just said, "I hate player comps." That will work its way in as a drop.
It already is.
That was a drop.
Yeah.
Yes. People already can't tell the difference.
It's completely ridiculous. Completely.
That was a drop.
Oh, somebody suggested Dan Dockich for me. Marco Killingsworth. That's a good one. Tom Pritchard. No, I could make free throws.
Ooh. Okay. Well, none of us saw you play. Your role, we've already established that your role on the show is Will Sheehy. Overconfident, irritant. You know, you make big plays, you make big shots.
Irrational confidence.
Yes, irrational confidence.
If irrational confidence is the measure, it might be Devin Dumas, might be the player comp.
I never nailed anyone in the balls, though. At least not that I'm aware of.
Okay. By the way, Ryan, one of the drops that we used last week. Where was this one? I got to find it real quick. I'll find it after the show. If I can't find it now, and I can't, so I'll find it after the show. You're gonna have to explain this one because we had some fun with it at the end of the show.
Great.
But let's talk basketball first.
Yeah,
because that's why we're here, ostensibly. Here we go.
Let's get this over with.
Here we go.
Oh, I just remembered the one that you were talking about. And I was like, what are we doing? But now I remember. So yeah, all right. Yeah.
All right, here we go. You are listening to the Assembly Call. We are wrapping up another week of talking IU basketball. I am Jerod Morris. I'm here with Andy Bottoms and Brian Phillips. And it is that time in the show where we answer your questions. We got a bunch of questions in to our private IU basketball community over on Mighty Networks. If you go to assemblycall.com/community, you can join up with us there anytime. Tons and tons of good conversation there throughout the week, especially on game days. So we'd love to have you join us in there. One of the questions that we got this week, Ryan, will go directly to you for this one. This is from Alex. Being that this is Ryan's first Thursday show after coming back, this might have been for a couple weeks ago, but he mentions how you love player comps, which we know that you do.
I hate player comps.
Which current or former IU player would you say that your style of play is most similar to? We've established that you're the Will Sheehy of this show, but that's for your behind the mic work.
I wish I had been half as athletic as Will Sheehy, quite frankly.
So briefly, as you get into this, briefly describe your game for us so that we might be able to also offer suggestions.
I was a defense first guy. I'm 6'3". I was mildly athletic. I was very skinny back in the day. I was like 170 in high school, 165, something like that. Decently athletic. I had a lethal jumper. Very white, very, very, very white. But I was a defender. I think I was a defender first, and I could hit a jumper.
Defender first, and you could hit a jumper.
I know who my comp would be if he was a better shooter.
Okay.
Well, the question was for you, so this would
Zach McRoberts.
If he was a better shooter, yeah. Because I was I was lethal from the baseline jumper. I would get points with that every game. Zach McRoberts is shooting like 40% as a three-point shooter in major college basketball the last 2 years. Well, back then we didn't shoot threes as much. I mean, we weren't like, it just wasn't part of the game. It was a lot of drive and kick, but kick to like 15 feet. And what would happen is somebody would drive and I'd be on the block. And I mean, I wasn't a center, but I would start down there and I would just like fade out to like short corner kind of and just lethal, knock it down every time.
That's just where Will Sheehy did a lot of work there too.
He did, but I'm nowhere near as athletic as Will Sheehy was. And he also had no conscience, and I would make sure I was open if I was going to shoot. I was not just a guy who was just going to fire threes for no reason.
Okay.
I mean, I find that a little hard to believe, but we'll take your word for it.
Not in high school, at least. If we're gonna go later on in life,
his shot selection was a little bit more judicious than his speaking selection when he's on the show, apparently.
Kidding me?
Fair enough.
Okay. Okay, so speaking of Zach McRoberts, that's a good segue from Chris. And Andy, we touched on this a little bit, but what do you see as McRoberts' role moving forward? As Chris says, coming back from injuries and back issues are tough. And I've seen other people talk about how, it seems like he's not quite having the same impact as last year. Defense not quite as on point, struggling a little bit with turnovers. Obviously made the huge play against Northwestern. But I would echo a little bit of that. He doesn't seem all the way back. And again, probably to be expected a little bit with the back issue. But, assuming that he gets back to being Zach McRoberts, what do you see as his role moving forward?
I guess I have, if you think about where he was at the beginning of the season to who's, essentially taking his spot in the starting lineup now is Al Durham. And so I think what you've seen from Al lately I think it's hard to take him out of the starting lineup based on what he's done. I think he provides certainly more of an offensive threat. He shot the ball really well. His 3-point shot has improved, and he's really taking the ball to the basket. So I think if you think about what people would view as negatives for Zach when he was on the court, it was he didn't look at the basket enough, was less willing to take shots and open shots than you might like him to be. And I think Al has, while probably not quite as good of a defender, I think is a very good defender and has the length to be, kind of a pesky defender on the wing in the same way. He provides, at least at this point, more of an offensive threat. So I think McRoberts, may or may not work his way back into the starting lineup, but I do think he can be a valuable guy to come off the bench and provide some energy minutes and things like that. I think you just get to a point where a little bit similar. The good thing is last year's team, you had a lot of combinations that would have multiple guys who weren't super offensive threats out there. I think this year's team, you have a little bit less of that as you kind of figure out who to pair him with. So I think he's still going to be important for the team, but I also don't know that I see him getting his way back into the starting lineup without injury or Al's play really falling off, which in a lot of ways is just a testament to how well Al has played of late.
Yeah, it's a good thing. It's not like he's getting it by default. Like he's got it, but he'll keep it because he's really earned it. He's playing well, shooting well, doing a lot of good things. Ryan, we'll probably end with this one. This is from Coach, who couldn't be here tonight, but really good question from him. Philosophy question that coaches have different opinions on. Do you design your offense to get maximum shots for the best player, or do you have an offense that allows for others to find their shots and the star player gets his in the flow of the game? There's, pros and cons of each. Interested to know what we think. He said he used to be in favor of one, but now has kind of changed some as a coach.
I think that you've got to design your offense so that anybody can insert themselves into any position and get their shots. Like I think that, if you design it specifically for your best player to get shots, what happens if he gets in foul trouble? Your offense is lost. I think you have to have interchangeable parts. And I think that you have to build the offense to work for everybody. But within that, if your best player is really that good, he's going to get his anyway. And he's going to find his way because, of course, there will be situations where he's going to have a shot. So I think you really have to have a balance, because if it's just about one guy and you're just built around one guy and your offense is built around one guy and he goes out and you're having to force somebody into his role and to get those shots. And it doesn't always work, especially if you build your entire team for a season around a guy. What happens if he gets injured? I just think that you should try and make sure that your guys all get into the flow of the offense, because your best players are going to rise to the occasion and are going to wind up getting theirs in that offense as well.
But you do want to make sure that your best players are getting the highest percentage of the shots. So you're saying that that'll kind of happen naturally just because of.
Yeah, if you look at what the Warriors do, and the Warriors have all those stars, what they do is they just move the ball. I mean, if you move the ball, everybody's going to touch it, and eventually everybody's going to get their touches and their shots. And I think that's the model everybody should strive for, is that just to move the ball and make sure everybody gets touches. And within that, everybody, your stars are included in that everybody, and they're going to have their opportunities.
What do you think, Andy? We got about 40 seconds left.
Oh, well, that should be plenty of time then. I think, I think you got to, find ways to make sure that you're, getting the ball in the hands of your playmakers.
Sure.
And you see IU do that with Juwan Morgan, where he's not bringing the ball up the court, but they're getting him the ball a lot in the post and letting him make good decisions. And those decisions are made within the flow of the offense that sometimes are going to be him getting a shot. Sometimes they're going to be creating opportunities for others. So I think, kind of what they're doing now is playing through those guys, but not necessarily playing through them in a way that is designed to make sure that they get a certain number of shots, and you kind of trust the guys who are your better players and your better decision makers.
Yeah, they're not forcing it.
Real quick, pick for Saturday. You think Indiana beats Louisville?
Yes.
Ryan? Andy, you
Yep.
bullish on the Hoosiers' chances against Louisville?
I think they do. I think the home environment's a big deal in that one.
Yeah, I think so too. All righty, that is going to do it for us on this week's episode of the Assembly Call. If you want to see us do the show live and be part of the live chat
mobbers,
join us at assemblycall.com on Thursday nights for the live broadcast of our Assembly Call radio recording. And you can always subscribe to our podcast by searching for Assembly Call wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget, go to assemblycall.com or text IU to 66866 to join our free email newsletter. Thank you for listening. We'll be back to talk with you Saturday after IU Louisville for the postgame show. Until then, keep your elbows in and your eyes on the rim. And go Hoosiers.
Thank everybody for coming out.
All right, I got to get out of here, folks. Thank you.
And cut. Oh, and I just realized you heard the drop that we were talking about, Ryan. It's the one that I played and you said was way too long. That's segment 30.
Oh yeah, that was way too long.
I gotta find it though, because it is funny. I don't remember where it went.
What is it about?
It's
I remember thinking
some girl. I don't know. I'll find it. I have too many of these.
Couple things. She hadn't heard from you for, I forget what it was.
For most of days.
Most of days.
I think is what you said. Yeah, I don't know why I can't find it, but anyway, I'll find it before next week. We have too many of these now. Really, I'm gonna have to take some time to get these organized.
If by we, you.
Hey, you guys keep sending me these, and you make me organize them. I mean, it's just
who's sending them to you?
I was kidding.
Okay. I thought people like viewers were actually sending.
No. I was kidding. I was kidding. I might have accidentally deleted that one. Is the problem actually? Oh, there it is.
Yeah, I was dating a girl who was not happy because she didn't hear from me for like most of days. She was like, "What are you doing?" Yeah, like, most of the days I was there, I was talking about Maui. Yeah,
but it still doesn't make any sense.
Well, most of the days I was there, would you give me a
right? But if you had said that, it would make sense.
Yeah, you know what? We're live. It's a live show.
He's trying to be efficient. He just cut out a few words here and there to try to expedite the story.
I'm never going to be a radio guy, I don't think. Boy, that hasn't aged well.
No. Oh, man.
I was on the radio today.
Yep.
Right.
Oh, yeah. Jamie says, after hours time, you promised last week. Wow, that is a good memory. Because you did promise last. I almost grabbed that as a drop, and then I didn't at the last second.
Right.
You
yeah,
did.
that's like
You promised. You promised.
It's like
stories.
kind of like having kids. You assume that they're going to forget stuff, and the thing they really latch onto. You can only punt stuff down the road for so long, where it's like, oh yeah, we'll do that, whatever. Hey, remember when you said that we would?
That's right. Damn it. That's right.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I've got is just some behind the scenes stuff from Maui. Like I was interviewing Coach K, and just asking about Zion and asking about the team and like how he thought they compared to some of the great teams of all time. That guy is amazing at talking for like 10 minutes and saying absolutely nothing. Like I listened to what he said about Zion Williamson and like the comparison and stuff, and it was like 8 minutes long, and I deleted it because there was nothing usable in it. Like absolutely nothing usable. And then I interviewed Sean Miller. He was very nice, but I will say that it was funny because the San Diego State guy, there's a lot of Arizona grads or the San Diego Union Tribune reporter who was there. There's a lot of Arizona grads in San Diego. So he asked him some questions. I'm sure he had an idea for a feature or something. Asked him some questions. And the last one, he said, okay, so with where the program's at now, and what you've gone through in the last year is how do you deal with like all the drama around the program? And Sean Miller was like, what drama? And he was like, with the investigation. He's like, what investigation? And he was like,
just stonewalled him. And
he was just like, I'm a basketball coach. That's all I focus on. And like, it was the coldest, most uncomfortable thing ever. I was just like, all right, I'm going to shut my recorder off and walk over here now and just like walk in a circle because I had nowhere else to be. Bruce Pearl, very nice guy. Just feels like a very slimy coach, but very nice guy. Could not have been nicer and more accommodating to the press. Definitely think he cheats. But
yeah,
he was a heck of a nice guy. Mark Few was interesting because I asked him, I was like, so what does Rui Hachimura do for you guys? And you ask a question like that, not because I haven't watched Rui Hachimura and not because I don't know what he does, but I'm getting the coach to say what he does so I can use it in my article. I was like, yeah, so what does he do for you guys? Like, tell me what he does for you guys. And he's like, well, he rebounds, scores points, and plays defense. Have you not watched him? I was like, Mark, you've been doing this for 20 years. You understand what I'm doing. And I was just like, come on, dude. Like, I was like, yes, I've watched. And he's like, well, then you know what he does. And I was like, God, I wanted to hang myself.
Okay, so then let me ask you this.
Should have went with the talk about Rui Hachimura.
I hate that.
Okay, so
I know you
but-
do. That's why I brought it up.
Yeah, that's the worst. Like, talk about this.
So just to play devil's advocate, because it does seem like a fair question, if you could ask it again, how would you ask it differently to try and get
Well,
maybe
I asked
something
him.
different
I
out
asked
of
him. So the first thing I asked him was, "What has Rui Hachimura done to improve?" And this off because he's made a big jump this year, and he just said, "Well, he worked really hard," and gave a couple things about like being in the gym and all that. But in there, I was kind of like, "Well, his rebounding has improved," or I was looking for like, "Well, he's gotten better at going to the basket," or he's gotten better. He just said, "Well, he's worked really hard and he's been in the gym." And I mean, it was a fine answer, but I'm looking for specifics, and I was like, "Well, talk about what he does for you guys." Like, I don't know how I would word it. I mean, I'm sure there's a better way to word that, but we're in a big press scrum and people are coming in and out or whatever. And I was just kind of like, talk about Rui Hachimura. And I hate saying that. I hate saying talk about because it's just lazy. There's no question there. It's just like, what do you need me to talk about it for 10 minutes? I can. He was born in Japan. He was, I mean, like, so yeah, that was kind of awful. I sat down with Jay Billis for 45 minutes, though. I'll have an article coming out on him eventually, but we talked to IU a little bit at the end, and he said he had some thoughts. He said he's a big fan of the team. He loves Romeo Langford, absolutely loves Romeo Langford, even as much as some of the other guys that are in this year, going to be in this year's draft class. Jay's awesome, by the way. He loves IU fans. He's absolutely just loves IU fans. And I actually asked him about Assembly Hall and what he thinks of it. He's like, for a good game, that atmosphere is unbelievable. It's as good as anywhere in college basketball. He said the problem is because it's so big and it's so cavernous that for a bad game, it really kind of stinks sometimes. But he said that there's a lot of places like that. He said, that's not unique to Assembly Hall. And I asked him, I was like, well, it's kind of a relic of the 70s. Would you get a new arena? And he's like, his exact words were, well, I can't say this because will this be on the podcast?
It will not be on the podcast. It'll live on YouTube for anybody who listens an hour into this.
Well, I won't swear.
Yeah.
It said, he's like, I was like, well, I mean, do you think they could build? Like, because I've always said I think the atmosphere would translate to any building because the atmosphere comes from IU fans, not from anything specific to the building. He's like, yeah, it'd be so weird to like knock the walls off at the end and all that. He's like, I mean, he knew like serious details about Assembly Hall because he spent a lot of time there, and he was talking about it. And I said, so would you build a new arena? Like, let's say money wasn't an issue. Would you build a new arena? And he says, I'll be honest with you, that atmosphere gets so good for big games, I wouldn't F with it. Like I would never F with it. I would just leave it as long as I could. So Jay and I, he's a friend. We disagree on that. But yeah. And then one of the things that was really funny, and this will be in the article because I'm going to do two with Jay, I think actually. And one of them I was asking about Zion Williamson, and I said, just, yeah, what do you think of it? Like, what is he going to be at the next level? Is he going to be a small forward? Is he going to be a power forward? Is he going to be out on the perimeter like a guard? Like whatever. I was like, what is he going to be at the next level? He's like, whatever he wants to be. Like he is that much in love with Zion Williamson. And I mean, seeing him in person, I get it. I really do. It's hard to tell on TV, but there's just something insane about that guy in person. I mean, you walk by him, you don't understand. Like, you think you get how big he is on TV, and I'd watched him a couple times, and then I watched a lot of video from him from high school and whatever, and then I walked by him like as he was walking onto the court, and I was just like, no, that's a different human being than I've watched. He's insane. He's just massive, and the way he moves and the 48-inch vertical and all of that stuff. There was a dunk where he got fouled and he jumped from probably like 10 feet out, like 10 feet from the hoop. He just turned around. He didn't have a run up. It was just kind of like, and he like just jumped and went up and cocked back and just started to throw it down. He got fouled. And people were buzzing in the arena for about 10 minutes afterwards. Like usually that happens. And then there's like, a pause and something else happens or whatever. But people were turning each other like, you saw that, right? Okay. And then like 10 minutes later, still like, can you believe what we just saw? Like it was like my dad was texting me as I'm sitting there doing the game. My dad's texting me about it for like 15 minutes and the game is going on. And I mean, he is just something we've never seen before. And I am loath to praise somebody at Duke or praise somebody who, is playing essentially for the Darth Vader of college basketball teams, but he really is pretty amazing. I'd rather jump in front of a train than Zion Williamson with a full head of steam. I would. I honestly would.
Well,
any other questions for me while we're doing this?
Let's see. The dude in the chat said, absolutely incredible that the man behind the Coach K skeleton with a hairpiece drop ended up actually getting an interview with Coach K. The world is truly a special place.
Well, I had a press pass and it was open, so a walking skeleton with a hairpiece. I mean, am I wrong? He's not a very good coach.
Jerod, I know you listen to One Shining podcast. Every time Tate breaks into the Coach K, like,
oh my God, it gets me every time.
I laugh out loud at my desk.
Gets me every single time.
What does he do? I haven't listened to that in a while.
He just
kind of like nasally and whatever. Yeah.
Well,
yeah. Yeah.
Well, here's the thing about Zion.
And he'll like always compare someone to like some like white Duke player from the past. It's like when Miles Plumlee was here.
He's really a lot like Shavlik Rand.
Yeah. That's really funny. Yeah, Archie was named in the bag man of the week on this week's episode for landing Trace Jackson Davis.
Nice.
So we got that going for us.
Yeah, I'm so backed up on podcasts. I need to catch up with them.
Theirs has become really good.
It always had like quality, like.
But they have so much better chemistry now.
Yeah.
And they've kind of fallen into their roles. They're good. And I think I've been emailing with Mark. I think he's going to try and come on for one of the Ohio State shows.
Sweet.
Yeah, which would be nice. I agree.
You should try and shoehorn Andy onto the One Shining podcast for bracketology.
Oh, we should. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, this football game is awesome. It's 23-2 Titans. And
23-2.
Yeah, and they just got the ball back on a fumble recovery. This is fantastic. I love my job sometimes. The worst primetime game in history. It's up there. It is up there. Poor Cody Kessler. Oh, he's just getting crushed.
Well.
Anyway. All right, so what do we next? Saturday?
Yep. Saturday, Louisville. So I'll see if I can find someone else that can hop on with us.
Because
Andy's out, Coach is out.
I should be there.
Galen will be there.
Get Zach maybe if he's.
Yeah,
Zach will probably. Well, it's Louisville, so he might be going. But if not, he'd be great to have because he knows Louisville. So yeah, I'll ask him.
Yeah, what's he been up to? We haven't had him on in a long time.
We just had him on Podcast on the Brink.
Okay.
He was. Yeah, he like had he was like coaching volleyball on Thursday night, so he couldn't do that. And then
gotcha.
Yeah, we're gonna try and work him back in. He's got this sweet new home studio now.
Really?
Yeah, it's pretty nice.
Awesome.
It's pretty nice.
Cool. All right,
y'all.
Sounds good.
Thanks for being here, everybody. We will see you guys on Saturday. Jamie says thanks, Ryan, for the after hours. Ben says Pat Knight for Ryan's comp.
I could see somebody mentioned Dane 5. I could see that. I was trying to go with a current player or within the last couple of years, but Dane 5's a solid one.
Kent says he hasn't heard Andy laugh so much as right now.
I mean, anytime you break out, Coach K impressions and Shavlik Randolph's name, can't really get much better than that, can you? All right.
Oh, come on. That's just all right, guys.
You know what's funny is every time I play that drop, I end up falling right into the laughter of my own that like ends it, which is always kind of funny.
What are you gonna do?
What are you gonna do?
What are you gonna do?
All right, y'all. Have a good night.
Thanks,
say, Andy, I guess we'll talk again Thursday.
Yep.
Because because we got that long week with nothing happening.
Yeah,
I kind of
a couple games in the big time.
Let's
holidays.
recharge the batteries a little bit.
I could kind of use that right about now. Yeah. So is it a week off and then they play Butler next Saturday?
Yeah.
Then they play off. Then they play like 2 games that week, and then they've got like 10 days off. So.
Yeah. Yep. Which is sweet.
Yeah.
So, all right.
All right, guys.
All right, everybody. See you guys on Saturday.
Later.
See you.